Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. In today's video we are going to be doing something ever so slightly different as we pick apart the lesser known aspects of one of the current world of wrestling's most enduring and prolific stars, the son of a plumber's son himself, Dustin Rhodes. That's right folks, today we are going to be examining the other gimmicks of the artist formerly known as Goldust. So join me as we look at some of the slightly lesser known characters portrayed by our gold wearing, oh so daring, Prince of Perversion himself. While you may never forget the name, Goldust, I am sure there are many of these other gimmicks on here that you would have forgotten about, or in some cases at least, Dustin would rather you had forgotten about. Born to Sandra and Virgil Runnels in Austin, Texas in 1969, Dustin Patrick Runnels was always going to go into wrestling, and at just 19 years old, in September of 1988, he made his full professional debut. Competing against local Florida legend and owner of one of the best working right hands in the history of the business, Bob Cook, Dustin's career was already in full swing right from the off, and it wasn't long before he captured his first championship gold in the form of the NWA Florida Heavyweight Championship. The fact he did this just after his 20th birthday suggests he might have been a bit of a natural. Dustin's well-documented and extremely successful career continued with gusto as it took him around the world to Japan, to the WWF and to WCW, teaming with his father and eventually back to the WWF with the extremely controversial and provocative Goldust character. But it's not the well-documented stuff we want to be looking at now. Fast forward to late 1997 and the already incredibly bizarre actions of Goldust were becoming increasingly and even more bizarre as he transitioned to the artist formerly known as Goldust during a feud with the Mastodon Vader. The artist name was a clear rib on Prince, which is sort of ironic if you believe the stories about what Prince had done to his ribs. And this new gimmick would see our man Dustin parody various other WWF superstars and just general celebrities in what I could only really describe as a series of grotesque cosplays. Accompanied by friend of the channel and terrifying she-demon herself, Luna Vachon, Goldie would make appearances as China Dust, Hunter Dust, Sable Dust, Marilyn Manson Dust, Vader Dust, and various others in a lot of segments and matches that would frequently push the boundaries of decency. In an era that is notorious for sex, violence, and over-the-top angles and general tastelessness, the artist formerly known as Goldust was involved in some of the most boundary-pushing stuff, and it was this dedication to wanting to shock that led Dustin to legitimately suggesting to Vince McMahon that the WWF pay for him to get breast implants. I'm not quite sure what the end game would be there, and I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it would have been a good thing or not. But Vince took the high ground for the first time in his life and shot the idea down. The ever-transitioning Goldust character then entered into a feud with porn star, fierce marijuana advocate and absolute stark-raving right-wing lunatic Val Venus over his relationship with Goldie's former valet and wife Terry Runnels. Dustin was now going by his real name and had adopted a born-again Christian gimmick, in which he spoke out about the raunchy and blasphemous product that he had previously contributed so much filth to. What a bloody hypocrite. Dustin spoke out about these matters in mostly pre-taped vignettes that had a similar delivery to that of a pastor or TV evangelist. Hilariously by the WWE's extremely unbloody hilarious standards, these vignettes were sponsored by a fictional group, Evangelists Against Television, Movies and Entertainment, which is an acronym for Eat Me. I'll just give you a second to recover from your side inevitably splitting from too much laughter. Dustin upped the religious ante by continuously referencing He's return and being seen with signs that read He's coming back, clearly alluding to the born-again Christian element of the character and heavily implying that he is talking about Jesus. It turns out Dustin wasn't talking about Jesus at all, and the whole thing was an elaborate ruse, as the he in question just ended up being Goldust, and the whole angle was simply to hype Dustin's return to the big gold jumpsuit. Great! Fast forward again just a little bit to June of 1999, and our man Dustin has left the WWF for the second time, and is about to make the journey over to Atlanta to start another run with WCW, and debut yet another new gimmick. Continuing with the face paint theme and donning a creepy all-black number, Dustin would now be known as Seven, a character supposedly based on The Strangers from the cult 1998 classic sci-fi movie Dark City. The character would be seen in several horror movie style vignettes, which look to have been loosely inspired by the infamous vampire outside the window scene in Salem's Lot. Dustin, or Seven, would be stood in full makeup standing outside a child's bedroom window while ominous music and effects played. And yes, that was as creepy as it sounds. It's extremely debatable how appropriate these vignettes were, but there's no denying once again our man Dustin was involved, good or bad, in some of the most boundary pushing material wrestling fans had seen up to this point. It turns out the build-up was a massive swerve, as when Seven made his incredibly elaborate debut, which involved pyrotechnics, levitating, and an overweight man in white face paint, Dustin immediately ripped the costume off and cut a shoot-style promo about unrealistic gimmicks and how he wouldn't portray one of these stupid characters again. Dustin revealed that he would be reverting back to his real name going forward. He also acknowledged and made disparaging remarks about the Goldust character, which he implied WWF management had forced on him, even going as far to say as, and I quote, "Goldust nearly killed my wrestling career." It was a bit of a shame that this happened at the time, when nobody really cared about WCW, as it was a pretty effective and engaging angle. What I think's up for debate here is why this swerve came about in the first place. Popular narrative suggests that pressure from Turner standards and practices about the controversial nature of the Seven character forced WCW executives' hands into changing it on the fly. But if you watch the whole thing play out show by show and hear the way Dustin cuts that promo, it very much appears retrospectively that the swerve was their plan all along. There are quite a few conflicting stories about this, so it's probably something we'll never know for sure, but it's rather intriguing looking back. Dustin went on to turn heel and adopted the nickname The American Nightmare, which is a play on the fact his father was known as the American Dream, and is also the name his brother Cody has been using in recent years. He went on to have various upper mid-card feuds during the last days of WCW's existence using this persona, and then went on to have a short but fruitful run on the Indies before resuming his tenure in the now WWE, as everyone's favourite Oscar lookalike, Goldust. This run lasted until December 2003, when our gold-faced chum was released into the wild to roam free on the Serengeti of the Indies, like the majestic golden bizarre lion that he is. It was during this time that he began going by the name of Dustin Rhodes Jr. while making appearances in Japan. He would go on to wrestle for TNA, using yet another gimmick name, this time going by the Lone Star Dustin Runnels. I'm starting to lose count of all of these nicknames now. This would be followed by more time on the Indies and a third run in the WWE as Goldust, before going off to All Japan Pro Wrestling and appearing this time as Goldustin, which is a very clever combination of the words gold and Dustin, in case you missed that. All this frolicking about from country to country and company to company was all well and good, but it was Dustin's return to TNA in 2007 that ended up being the most interesting part of this stage of his career. For all the wrong reasons though. Dustin made his TNA return on July 15th at the Victory Road pay-per-view, immediately entering into a feud with Chris Harris by helping Christian Cage defeat him. In the following weeks he would go on to talk in an in-depth interview with Mike Tenay about the split personality that he has been covering up for so many years. He claims that he was going to let the dark and evil side of his split personality out, and he went on to apologise for what he was about to unleash on the world. That apology would prove to be rather prolific, as what he was about to unleash onto the world was total rubbish. Dustin's new character was called Black Rain, and it appeared to be a bit like a cross between Goldust and a load of bin bags covered in bird poo. sort of like an anti-Goldust, but with added bird poo. Black Reign's debut came in a match at the Hard Justice pay-per-view against Chris Harris, in which Mr. Reign gave not only Chris Harris, but also some referees and kayfabe security guards a bloody good thrashing. He ended up handcuffing Harris to the ropes and bludgeoning him with a weapon in a spot that actually looks incredibly brutal. As far as debuts go, this wasn't a bad one. TNA management clearly wanted Dustin to look super strong, but unfortunately for our bin bag wearing charm, things would quickly take a bit of a nosedive. As the feud with Chris Harris continued, Black Reign would introduce his pet rat Misty into the equation, and would bring Misty to the ring with him in a stupid looking cage. It's sad to note, but it's also impossible to ignore that this was the lowest point in Dustin's career both physically and mentally, and he'd really let himself go in terms of his physique. Gone was the slim, lean, athletic natural of yesteryear, and in its place was a pudgy, bloated shell of his former self that seemed to have collected as many chins as he had wrestling personas. Dustin has later gone on to confess that he had a serious alcohol and pain medication dependency during this portion of his career, and it is unfortunately evident from his performances in the ring. Despite all the jokes, I genuinely believe Dustin Rhodes is one of the finest in-ring competitors of his generation, and possibly the best wrestler to never come up in the best wrestlers ever polls. So it's a shame to see his in-ring work suffer so badly here. You can see flashes of the brilliant wrestler he is, but it's so covered up and obscured by bin bags, bird poo, extra chins and stupid rats that it's almost hard to notice. Black Reign would go on to mostly participate in garbage matches and weapons brawls against the likes of Abyss, Raven, Shark Boy and for some reason, Relic, who our man would also occasionally team with. He would also enter into a slightly more meaningful feud with a very hot at the time Frankie Kazarian around this juncture, but it proved to be equally as uneventful as his incredibly repetitive stint as a hardcore weapons match guy. Truth be told, Dustin's current incarnation as Black Reign and this whole TNA run was becoming a borderline embarrassment. He seemed to be becoming increasingly sluggish as the weeks went on, and the decision by TNA management to make his tag team with Relic more of an official one seemed to be an acknowledgement of this, particularly as going forward it was clear that the vast majority of the in-ring responsibility was falling on the former Johnny the Bull Stamboli's rather broad shoulders. The team now seemed to be officially called the Monsters, which is a fittingly lazy name given how lazy our man's current TNA run had been. The Monsters and Black Reign's final TNA match came in a losing effort against the former Dudley Boys Team 3D, and with that, the most depressing period of Dustin Rhodes' illustrious career was over. Dustin has become notorious for reacting very badly to anyone who dares mention his stint as Black Reign to him in interviews or online. He has blocked countless people on Twitter and social media for bringing it up, and it seems to be a very touchy subject. Quite frankly, I can see why, so if you're watching Dustin, please don't block me on Twitter, I promise I didn't mean it. Now for the positives. Dustin would bounce back tremendously from this dark time in his life, and has gone on to do great things, and has elongated success in the later stages of his career, spanning all the way to the present day and his current run in AEW, which has already yielded several excellent matches and moments. The end of Black Reign would also be the last of Dustin's other gimmicks, which also means it's the end of this video, but who knows what's next for our sensitive golden chum. Perhaps he'll break the bird poo and bin bags back out once again, or maybe he'll finally get those breast implants he was so keen to have back in the day. Only time will tell us the answers to these amazing questions. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's bizarre tale, and hopefully you never will forget the name, Goldust. However, I would also prefer it if you did not forget the name of this channel, Top Hat Wrestling Man, where you can watch various videos covering bizarre and strange elements of professional wrestling history. Why not check out my video covering the untold story of Gangrel, or my upload on Kurt Angle's weird brother. Click the end cards to watch more of my work now. Yeah, cheerio.